Welcome to MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 201. We're approaching Rosh Chodesh Adar this week, the beginning of the new month of Adar, the last and 12th month of the year as we count them by the calendar, the lunar calendar. We are also in the week of Parshas Terumah, and additionally, the Shabbos, Parshas Terumah, has another name in Poskim. It's called the Shabbos Hafsokeh. Hafsokeh means a separation. Hafsokeh means a pause, a Shabbos of pause. Why? Because there are the 4 chapters that we read during this time, going from Adar through Nisan, the Parshas Shkolim, which we always read on the Shabbos that blesses the month of Adar, or on the Rosh Chodesh Adar, Shkolim. We spoke about that last week. There's the Shabbos, after that comes Parshas Zachor, the Dalet Parshas. And this is an additional reading to the regular reading of the Torah as Parshas Zachor, which is always the Shabbos before Purim, the Shabbos we read about remembering Amalek. It's always preceding, of course, the events with Haman, who originated from Amalek. The third Parsha is Parshas Parah, that comes after Zachor. And there's a final Parshas HaChodesh, Parshas Parah, we read about the offering of the red heifer, that purified from Tumas Mes, from the impurity of death, which preceded the Shabbos, Parshas HaChodesh. We read about the Chodesh HaZelachem, which is around the Rosh Chodesh Shabbos before or on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, that talks about the redemption, the new moon, and the carbon that was brought then. And Parah is read before that because Parah is you have to be purified before you bring an offering. But when you count these 4 weeks, the question is, do they all come in consecutive weeks? No, they over a span of 5 weeks. So Parah and HaChodesh are always one consecutive leading into the other. But Shkolim and Zachor can be 2 scenarios. You can have a scenario where right after you read Parshas Shkolim, the next week you read Zachor, or it can be that there's a pause between the 2, which is like it is this year. And this is Parshas Terumah, it's called Hafsokeh. Sometimes the Hafsokeh comes that you read Shkolim and then right next week Zachor, and the Hafsokeh is between Zachor and Parah. I hope you followed. The Rebbe has a fascinating sikha where he spoke about this on Parshas Terumah, which was a Hafsokeh, back in Tov Mem. Tov Mem would be 38 years ago. So we're going to talk about that briefly, a lesson from that. But I just wanted to first, I always begin with the time, but I want to first begin, since this is the last few days before the due date of the essay contest, our 4th annual MyLife Chassidus Applied essay contest. So I want to begin with that because of the timeliness of it. At the end of this week, on Rosh Chodesh Adar, the 2nd day of Rosh Chodesh Adar, which will be Friday, 11:59 a.m., Friday afternoon, Friday right before noon, Eastern Standard Time, is the due date for the submissions of the essays. So you really have essentially 6 more days. And I want to encourage everyone to participate for the $10,000 first prize, the $3,600 second prize, and the $1,000 third prize, plus an additional track of a $500 prize to students aged 14 to 21. Essays have already been coming in. I think it probably will bypass. I don't know if that's the right word. We'll have more essays this year than we had in the previous years, which is great news. It means the word is spreading. It means that people are engaged. And I've heard in a few schools they actually made it mandatory, as for 12th graders for different classes, to actually present a paper like this. And it's actually an unbelievable opportunity. And I say this especially to educators. If you're teaching Chassidus, and generally you want to give assignments or writings that you want the students to do, here's an excellent opportunity with the additional incentive of the prizes involved and the public forum of honoring the awarded essays. So every essay written, from my point of view, is a winner because it's taking someone who's taking their time and energy, and valuable time and energy, to apply themselves, to take an idea from Chassidus and apply it to contemporary issue or challenge in life. But competition, competition brings out the best in us. So I will encourage everyone to participate. The guidelines and the details of how to submit an essay are all very clearly stated at meaningfullife.com/contest. And please participate. You have really nothing to lose, on the contrary, all to gain. And we made it especially in a way that anybody can win. I always repeat the same rules. Besides reading the guidelines, make sure that your essay follows each aspect of the guideline. It will definitely heighten your score. We've already announced also the prestigious judges. All can be found on the landing page, as I said, meaningfullife.com/contest. And I look forward to reading the essays and seeing the essays and making sure the judges are excited to evaluate them. And in the next few weeks, leading toward Pesach, we plan to announce it right either around Yud Aleph Nisan or a little around that, a little earlier, depending when the essays are all finished evaluation. Everyone is being read blindly by the judges, means they have no clue who wrote those essays, not the name of the person, not their age, not their gender, not where they come from in the world. And of course, the essays are either in English, can be submitted in English, Hebrew, or Yiddish. Okay, let's now go back to the time in which we are, which is, we'll start with Adar, and we'll move to Terumah and Hafsokeh, as I mentioned. So Adar, of course, Adar immediately leads, especially when you take into context Adar from the point of view of Chassidus Applied to Adar. What does Chassidus have to say about the month of Adar? So the primary thing Chassidus emphasizes is the Simcha. Mishanichnes Adar marbim b'simcha. As Adar enters, we increase in joy. Simcha is a foundational element in Judaism in general. Ivdus Hashem b'simcha, you shall serve God with simcha. In Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef made it clear. They say Shnei Tmidin, just like there were two Tmidin offerings, public offerings brought, one in the morning, one in the evening. So you have in Orach Chaim, he begins with Shavisi Hashem L'Negdi Samid, the first Tamid, and it concludes with Teiv Leiv Mishta Tamid, that your heart shall always be filled with Mishta, with joy and celebration. Tachas Hashalevata B'Simcha B'Tuv Levov, as the Alter Rebbe says at the end of chapter 26 in Tanya, from the Arizal, Neida L'Koel, everybody knows what the Arizal says about it, but the foundational element that not just to serve God, but to serve God with joy. The Baal Shem Tov, the Miyasid, the founder of Chassidus, and of course his successors, the Maggid of Mezrich, and then the Alter Rebbe and the Rabbeim afterwards, made Simcha into a Yesod, a foundational element in the Chassidic approach. Now, what does that mean? As I pointed out a number of times, obviously it doesn't mean they came to innovate anything new. Simcha is a mitzvah in the Torah, long before the Baal Shem Tov. But they emphasized it, just like Avis Yisrael, and just like divine providence, and just like his creation, perpetual creation. And that we learn a lesson from everything in this world, even though these principles existed, but Pirush Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov spread it. The Baal Shem Tov emphasized it. He shined a light on these foundational elements and taught us also how to achieve joy. And that is through accessing the soul of everything. And that's why it's so much connected to Chassidus. Why? Because someone can say, my life is not joyous. I have many, many negative things happening in my life. I have many reasons not to be happy. Difficulty at job, difficulty at home, difficulty in my personal life. People have it. We all go through our challenges. So how could you expect me to be mishted, tamid, always joyous? Everything should be done with joy. There are times there's joy, there's times that's difficult to have joy. So how does a person come to joy? The answer is, if you live your life basically on that surface level and you are a victim or a product of circumstances, yes, so there are days, better days, as they say, and there are not such good days. There's the bright days and there's the cloudy days. However, since life is not just on the surface level and superficial level, if you dig deeper and you access your soul and you ask yourself your question, why is my soul sent to this world? And you live a life that also is defined, at least also, or primarily defined by the soul's interests, then the mere fact that you were born, that you were created, that you're given a new day, no matter what happens that day, your mission should make you celebrate, because that is why you were given that gift, the gift of life, the gift of a calling. You say Moed Ani in the morning to acknowledge that gift. The soul was returned to you to start a new day. The day may sometimes go easier, may sometimes go harder, but even the hard day is also part of your mission. When someone's on a mission, no matter what part of the journey they're on, whether it's an up or a down, a dip or twist or turn, it's part of the same joyous journey. And you'll see people who are focused on that element, the mission of their lives. Sometimes you reap, sometimes you have to sow. Sometimes you things come easier, sometimes they come more difficultly. You have to exert yourself, and often there are challenges, and there can even be painful moments. But you look at it as a spiritual journey, as an entire journey, then it's all, instead of looking at it from moment to moment, now I'm happy, now I'm not happy, there's a general joy that permeates, that is a undercurrent of that journey of life called the life of mission, the calling that you were given in this world. Now, if a person does not focus on that part, obviously then the winds will sway them from one direction to the next. One wind will blow nicely and you'll feel good. Another day the wind blows not nicely or too extremely, and it could cause you pain and suffering. But if a person has that foundation, that individual foundation which Chassidus teaches us, to connect to the soul, why are you here? The big picture. Then every part of the journey, even whatever winds blow, the easier winds or the more difficult winds, you have a foundational base that keeps you unwavering in forging ahead. And forging ahead, sometimes, yes, you go forward thrust, sometimes you have to pause and prepare yourself for the next stage. That's a common thing in business. Sometimes you're in a state where you are reaping, where things are growing and there's a lot of growth. But sometimes when there's a lower, when the markets are quieter or there's a certain ebb and there's a certain pause in that type of accelerated growth, what do you do then? You take stock, you prepare, you evaluate, you strategize. All that is part of the process. Just like when someone studies something, you study, and then sometimes you need to pause in order to be able to absorb, prepare you for the next stage. This is the common process of a real journey. When we're immature, or we don't focus, or we're completely consumed with instant gratification, we say, I want it now. It doesn't work that way. You plant the seed, you water. Sometimes there'll be storms, sometimes there'll be droughts, but you keep persistently watering and cultivating, then slowly it grows and grows and emerges. And that's the key, to see it through. That's why Chassidus is such a foundational element, because Simcha gives you that soul connection to everything that you're doing. And as the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, in that chapter 26, that you also have then the confidence that you can fight any battle. As he says, Atzvus, the alter ego, the diametric opposite of joy, it drags you down, weighs you down, you feel depressed, you feel demoralized. Joy is that sense that I can accomplish anything I set my mind to. Now, that doesn't mean every day it's the same type of movement. It means that that's a general approach, because you were given a mission, you were given all the resources you need to fulfill that mission. So, Mishanichnas Adam Marbim B'Simcha, Marbim B'Simcha doesn't mean there's Simcha all year round, as I said. It's a foundational Tamid, Tev Lev Mishta Tamid. But in Adar, there's additional focus, and one of the reasons is because of Purim, and because it's transformed even the greatest challenge, a challenge of genocide, to Chedesh Hashanepach B'hem, and one that was transformed to a month of joy. But the joy doesn't begin Purim, which is in 2 weeks. From the Chedesh to Yudalat Tezvav Adar, but it begins immediately as we enter the month. So it's an increased connection, because sometimes when you go through a dark moment and you come to light after that, obviously the joy is even greater. Ein simcha kataros asvekas. There's no joy as great as the one when you resolve doubts. And even more than doubts, you resolve a terrible decree and the challenges of life, darkest challenges. Amalek is gematria sofik. So kataros asvekas, you resolve the doubt that come from the other side that tries to weaken our resolve, which we will read in Parshas Zachor, but we're not there yet. So this is the lessons that we learn about joy as we are about to enter into the month of Adar. Terumah, and also Parshas Hafsokeh. So Terumah, of course, is the offering and the donations, the equally Terumah that Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, God says to Moses, tell the Jewish people, equally Terumah, they shall bring from me a Terumah literally means to upshaden, to separate, but it means a Terumah, a donation, a contribution from which we will, the temple, the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary that was then in the wilderness as they traveled, will be built from the gold, silver, and copper, and the other 12, 15 items that are mentioned in the Torah that we contribute from our physical matter, from our physical beings, and from physical possessions to turn the physical world into a sanctuary, into a dwelling place, into a dira, a home, a comfortable home for the divine. V'shachanti b'seichem. V'aseh li migdash, you shall make for me a sanctuary, and I will rest among you. That, of course, immediately brings to the greatest joy. Because it's not just a joy from spiritual activity. There's joy, you can say, you know what, I'm involved in my mundane activities and my physical activities. Okay, I try to make ends meet, I try to succeed. You could have so-called satisfaction and contentment and joy from physical success. But real spiritual joy comes from my family, from Shabbos, from Yom Tov, from the things that I do that are involved on a spiritual level. No, the Mishkan is not made from spiritual items, it's made from physical items. Because in Judaism there is no dichotomy, there's a fusion, an utter unity between the matter and spirit. And from matter itself, we make a home for the spirit, for the divine spirit. The Shekhinah should rest there, which even increases even more in the joy. So it's not just a material joy at one end of the spectrum, spiritual joy elsewhere, but it's a joy that comes together that you can actually take your material life and your work, and even the things that sometimes are challenging on a physical level, and not just escape into a Shabbos or into a spiritual transcendent state, but you actually take the physical, and that itself becomes a keli, a container, a dwelling place, a platform for divine presence. Which means that there's then, therefore, nothing is devoid of the divine purpose of our lives. Even our physical activities are means toward that spiritual end. So that only increases, because unity and joy always go hand in hand. When a person feels fragmented, they can feel confused, they can feel disoriented. When you feel that every part of your life is going toward a direction, the same direction, it creates a certain peace of mind, a certain comfort, certain synchronicity, that everything is directed towards something. Think about it. You come home, or your desk, you feel everything is everywhere, or you feel your life is cluttered from so many different directions. And when you find that type of unifying principle where you could say, the different things I'm doing, as diverse as they are, but they all fit, they're going toward a general, one higher purpose, it has a very deep inner satisfaction, that because the soul gravitates towards that type of inner unity. And this is a very profound concept in Chassidus, applying Chassidus to our lives, is the psychological peace of mind that you do not live a fragmented life, even though it can appear to the eye that there are many fragments of our lives, but there's a thread that connects them all to a higher divine calling and purpose. And I believe that probably, if you can achieve that, it will preempt and solve most of our internal, emotional, personal, psychological issues, which are often based on on being tugged by different directions, tugged in the different voices and the different demands and expectations, both in inner voices and outer voices that make their demands and expectations of us. So the unity that is so vital to a human being's welfare and our personal well-being on the deepest possible level to succeed at anything we're doing, is so much dependent on the idea of the joy that brings out in our lives, on the unity that we can achieve. And finally, with Parshas Hafsokeh, this week is Hafsokeh, and this fascinating sikha which I refer you to, Parshas Terumah Tavshin Mem, the Rebbe explains briefly that you can say Hafsokeh seems to be a negative thing. It's like you're pausing. Something is flowing good, you're reading the Parshas, you're doing something positive, and then suddenly you take a stop. But in Judaism and Torah, there's no such thing as a stop. Even the stop is part of the journey. It's just like when a person travels and they say, I have to rest for a while. Rest is not a problem. Rest is part of the journey. To gather energy, to take stock. So we find that when Hashem taught Torah to Moses, so what does it say in the beginning of Parsha Vayikra? There was mafsik ben parsha la parsha. Hashem made Hafsokeh. He paused. Now Hashem is an unbelievable teacher, the greatest ever. Moshe is the greatest student ever. What do you need to pause? Just keep on going. Because pauses are necessary for internalizing, for integrating. And Moshe needed those pauses. So the pauses become also part of the journey. So Shabbos Hafsokeh is not a Hafsokeh meant to be a pause, a stop. In a negative sense, it's part of the process of growth, because there's two ways you can do your work. You can do your work by going forward, and there are times you need to pause, to absorb, to internalize, to take stock. So that's the Shabbos Hafsokeh. That after we do Shkolim. Shkolim is the beginning of the Aveda. What's the beginning of the Aveda? The first thing is Avos Yisrael. Loving your fellow. Unity. That everybody feels they're a half a shekel, and you need the other half to be complete. That's the foundation of everything. So after that, you take Hafsokeh. Why the Hafsokeh? The Hafsokeh is not just a pause, but as the Rebbe explains there, the pause is also to be able to climb even higher. Sheva Yipul Tzadik V'kom, as the Alter Rebbe explains in the introduction to Shari Yechad V'Amunah Chinuch Kotten, that the pause is in order to gather more strength so you can even now climb to the next level. So it's not just a pause, as I mentioned before, a pause because you need to rest to be able to go further, but to go even higher, you sometimes need to pause and sort of stop. But not a stop, it's in order to get even a greater level. So after Shkolim, we take a pause. But there are years, not like this year, where the pause comes after Zachor. Why is that? So the Rebbe explains that when Parshas Shkolim is done right, and we internalize the message, what message? Of love, with passion, fiery passion, and it lasts a whole week because Shabbos blesses the entire week, then immediately we get the lesson, okay, now you think you've done that? Let's now grow to the next level. Pause in order to climb in that type of unity to grow to another level. However, there are times where the passion wears off and Amalek comes into the picture and cools us off and tries to make us complacent. That's why you sometimes need Zachor right after Shkolim to remind you. Because since you may not have had the fire completely lit, to remind you to watch out, there's Zachor, remember what Amalek did. And then after that comes the Hafsokeh that tells you now that you're reminded, now needs the pause to teach you to grow to the next level and go even higher. That's how the Rebbe explains it. Additionally, the Rebbe brings another point with Hafsokeh, which is a beautiful concept, that for example, you have with Rabbi Zayda in the Gemara, where he studied the entire Talmud Bavli and became a master, and then he decided he wants to fast. He wanted to master now the Talmud Yerushalmi. There are two academies, the Babylonian Talmud, the Jerusalem Talmud. In order to achieve mastery of the Jerusalem Talmud, he fasted to forget the Babylonian Talmud, so he could elevate to the Jerusalem Talmud. So the Rebbe asked the question, fast? To forget Torah? What kind of behavior is that? But it's a Hafsokeh, in order to reach a greater place. The fasting was not to forget. The fasting was to get out of the methodology of the Babylonian approach so he can prepare himself for the methodology of the Jerusalemite Talmud approach, the Jerusalem Talmud approach. So here again you see that need for Hafsokeh. The Rebbe explains that Hafsokeh can be of two parts. One is when you're studying Torah, you come to a point where you have to then sometimes pause in order to bring that study into action. So that's a pause in order to implement the Torah. Or because it's a mitzvah that you have to fulfill that no one else can fulfill. But then in Torah itself, we see from the story of Rabbi Zayda that in Torah itself you can have a pause. And the Rebbe compares it to the space, the white space that you see in a Sefer Torah. When you write, there's the Livnunis, the white space is like the Hafsokeh, there's nothing there in the white space. The black space is where the letters are. But for the letters to really be appreciated, you need white space, you need a Hafsokeh. And the Rebbe compares it also to the Tzimtzum Arishin. The first Tzimtzum, what's a Tzimtzum? Is a Hafsokeh. It says clearly that the light, the infinite light that filled everything, then went to a state of a Hafsokeh. He paused the light, like lights out, and created a Cholul Amokim Pani. But what was the kavanah of the Hafsokeh? Not to remain a Hafsokeh. The kavanah is in order to bring in the light in even a greater way. And then when you do it after the Hafsokeh, you reach a level, the Rebbe says, even higher than the air before the Tzimtzum. That's the process of life, that you need to have those stages. So sometimes you're going forward, that's the flow of light, and sometimes you need a Hafsokeh, but the Hafsokeh is not an end in itself. It's only a stepping stone in order to reach even a Tzimtzum B'Shvil HaGilui. That the Tzimtzum, the Hafsokeh, is in order to be a revelation that comes afterwards. In our personal lives, this is a process that all of us have to realize that in life, as I mentioned before, the joy of life is recognizing this journey, that the journey is not just one forward thrust. It's you go forward, there are pauses we take, but the pauses are also part of the growth. And they actually reach and achieve even a higher level of growth. There are more details about this that you can look up in that Sikha. Now let's move into now some topics that were asked, some are follow-up. So let us begin with, before I begin, let me give you some cross-referencing. Remember that MyLife Chassidus Applied is now 200 episodes strong, and we're now in the 201st. Thank God. I would never have believed it, but yes, and questions keep coming in. Thousands and thousands of questions that we've already addressed. We're talking about 4 years now, 4 years of 200 episodes. So all of these episodes can be found archived at meaningfullife.com/mylife. You'll find them archived. You can find there Also, the forum where you can submit your question, anonymous question, comment, completely anonymous. Or if you're requesting any material that you hear, that we speak about, that reference is made to, and you want to get it by email, please add your email address, of course, for us to be able to respond and send it to you. There you'll also find all the essays that were written in the 3 previous contests. And Mr. Hashem, when this contest concludes, we'll be posting the winners and then all the essays as they in the order that of their marks, as we post them week after week. So you can find many essays, hundreds and hundreds of essays on literally every topic under the sun. So I'm mentioning it because also cross-referencing, it's inevitable in 200 episodes that we're not going to overlap and certain topics are going to be discussed more than once. So what I attempt to do is always cross-reference, because there are topics that I've addressed in one program and another one much more elaborately. No need to always repeat the whole thing again. So it's easy to find, very easy to find by searching. And after I give you the episode numbers, you can also look at each episode, and it's time-stamped. Something many people keep asking about. Every episode is time-stamped, which means that you can actually go to the topic addressed, and there's a link. You just click on it, you can jump right straight to that topic addressed, and you don't need to listen to what was before or after. So regarding Adar, Terumah, and Hafsokeh, well, Hafsokeh I have not discussed before, but Terumah, Adar, and Terumah, please I refer you to episodes 56, 102, and 152. Okay. The next question is we'll go over to another topic, which is the topic of abuse. Sadly, we still live in a world where abuse is possible, and unfortunately also comes from time to time actual, not just possible. And abuse takes on many different shapes and forms, and I've talked about it for many, many different weeks. But the questions do come in because these are real issues that people are asking about. And though I don't like comfortable reading it, I'm not comfortable addressing it, but I do feel honored the fact that people feel the confidence and the trust in this program and in myself to be able to address some of the most sensitive and more painful issues in life. And Torah Chassidus does not answer, is only there to give us directives when the sun is shining and everything is great. That doesn't address the other part of life when things are not that great, or when there is a concealment, a momentary concealment. So though, as I said, it's not something we want, it's not pleasant, but it's critical to demonstrate and prove and establish that Chassidus, Torah and Chassidus addresses even the darkest corners of our lives. I've heard this from many people who say, yes, it's very nice, the Torah is very good, Pesach, Purim, the holiday, Shabbos, for people who are healthy and happy. But for people like us who feel forsaken, who feel alone, who feel isolated, who feel that nobody understands us, who feel that our pain is all alone, what does the Torah have to say about that? What does Chassidus have to say? That is why I'm focusing, and I focus as much as possible in responding to questions of that nature, just as much as questions that come of different nature. Just wanted to state that and welcome anyone to please do not feel you are alone. You can write any question you like, and I give you my pledge and my promise that I will address it. Sometimes not the same week. It may take a few weeks because we have a real backup of questions, but I will address it, and especially the most painful ones and the most saddest ones, I often give priority to because of the nature of the request. So please feel you have the absolute opportunity, and I say this to everyone listening, to share it also with friends and family and others who may feel they have nowhere to turn to. They actually can feel completely comfortable and complete confidence that they can anonymously submit any question, no matter what is happening. And anyone who's listened to this can testify to the fact and verify that I address things that are not comfortable, as well as obviously comfortable things, and even things that are considered taboo or too provocative or too sensitive. Obviously, it has to be done with discretion, the right type of expressions, and of course with the right amounts of confidentiality, which always is preserved. And anyone can write those questions, and I want to just reiterate it again and again, because that, above all, is breaking the silence and knowing that you have the right and the dignity to be able to express yourself, even something that where you've been hurt and people have silenced you or have invalidated you. Please see this as an opportunity to counter that by beginning to speak up and hopefully grow through that, and I will do my best to respond to it. And of course, if you want to proceed and pursue this further and want to speak to me I'll be happy to speak to any person if you send an email and send us a way to contact you, or we'll give you a way so we know how to reach you, or you can reach us, and can stay anonymous as well. It does not have to breach any type of confidences. I'm stating it because from time to time it has to be stated clearly. This is a big part of the objective of Chassidus, applying Chassidus even to the darkest corners, even to sometimes the ugliest spaces that all of us have, because this is the world in which we live, and this is the purpose for which God sent us here, is to deal also with that darker place. So with that said, we'll talk about something: adult abuse survivors, abuse issues. Now, the topics have been addressed in previous episodes. I'll refer them after I read the question. So this is a question that goes like this: does a survivor need to show respect to an abusive parent? I'm a professional that works with many frum women who are married and struggle in various ways. Very often these women reveal having endured sexual abuse as a child by a trusted family member. I should add, viewer discretion advised. If children are watching or anything like that, maybe I should have mentioned the drop earlier. This is nothing will be said here that is inappropriate, but sometimes parents may feel some of these words may not be appropriate for everybody. And I agree, they shouldn't be necessarily stated, so I'm just mentioning that since it is talking about a sensitive issue. Okay, so this professional is working with many from women who are dealing with this form of abuse. Often they have made the choice not to share, as they're terrified of the impact it will have on their families and various other reasons. They struggle with, especially when the abuser was a parent, not seeing Yiddishkeit as something horrific, as the parent was respected and a role model to others, including other family members, of what a religious man looks like. What does Chassidus say regarding respect of their abuser? Do they need to allow them to be under their children's chuppah? Do they must sit shiva when their time comes? Meaning shiva for a parent who is an abuser. They may go through the motions as they haven't shared due to damaging family name, but they resent religion and God. How can they make peace within themselves from a Chassidic perspective? Okay. Yeah. As I said, this is not pleasant to speak about, but we must speak about it for the obvious reasons. So, the question therefore breaks into two. One, I said already, does a survivor need to show respect to an abusive parent? And the second, how can a survivor avoid seeing Judaism as horrific when the abuse came from a Jewish role model? Yeah, we'll deal with one at a time. But I'll begin firstly with the cross-referencing. Generally, honoring abusive parents I addressed back in episodes 13 and 14, from the earliest episodes, as well as related to that episode 199, which was also about honoring parents who don't always seem to deserve honor. General abuse issues I have discussed additionally in episodes 55, 56, and 57, 103, 136, and 147. I'm giving you the full cross-referencing, and you can, as you see fit, you can check that out. But now I will address these issues, and I definitely refer you to those others because I'm sure there are topics that I addressed more elaborately then, and I'm not going to repeat those. Try to focus on the exact questions here. So, we have the mitzvah of Kabbalah Savicha V'Samecha. Let's start with that. It's one of the 10 commandments. Honor your parents, your father and mother, L'man Yadicha U'Yamecha, in order for you to have lengthy days. So, of course, the obvious question is this an unconditional mitzvah? Meaning, what happens if the parents are murderers? Just using it as an example. Or they do something that's simply completely horrendous. So, what was there? Is it Kabbalah Savicha without any disclaimers or any exclusions? So, of course, in Torah, Halacha talks about it. One example is that if your parents ask you to do something that breaks the Torah, you're not supposed to listen. It says Kabed. So the answer is very simple. Your parents have to honor God too. So they cannot tell you to do something that defies God, because God gave this whole power in the first place. So there you have an exception. That immediately you can extrapolate from that other exceptions in the same context. If your parents ask you to do something that is a crime, to hurt someone else, that's breaking Torah, besides not menschlichkeit, obviously. But you see from that, it's not just an unconditional mitzvah and simple as that. It's not that simple. Now, however, this is what's important to remember. Even when you are, let's say your parents ask you to do something that's inappropriate, that breaks law, Even then you're honoring your parents when you don't do it. Why? Because you're honoring God, who your parents have to honor. They're just distorted. They're messed up. They're asking you to do something because they're unhealthy. So in a way you're honoring them. Why? Because you're honoring their life that they gave you is actually the foundation of why we honor our parents, as I've discussed a number of times. Chassidus asks the question, God gives life. There's no shittuf. In Judaism, a Jew is not allowed to remember, it's like considered avodah zarah for a Jew to think that there's a partner to God. Not just that there's a replacement to God, God forbid. Avodah zarah mamash, an idol. But even a partnership. So why do we honor our parents? They're partners, we know there are three partners. The answer is you're not honoring your parents, you're honoring the godly power that was passed on through them to give you life. That's why the fifth mitzvah, the fifth commandment is Chabad Savicha. Where's the fifth commandment? On the first tablet. The second tablet begins Ben Adam L'Chavere, the thing that you're not allowed to do to hurt others. Chabad Savicha, you think, is also Ben Adam L'Chavere. It's between you and your parents. Not Chavere as a friend, but to another human. No. It goes with the mitzvahs like Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am your God, Le'yilecha, Shabbos, not to curse God, Shabbos. These are all mitzvahs between us and God, because the mitzvah of honoring your parents is between us and God, not between us and our parents. Now, if they earn the right, meaning they are nurturing and they're fine, obviously, besides just honoring the life that comes through them, which is the minimum, you can also love them and you can also honor them for everything they've done for you. But the foundation is even the worst possible parents, there's still room for honor, because you're not honoring them, you're honoring the life that you receive from them, which explains why it gives you long life. That's why of the Ten Commandments, this one states the reward we get. Why is it negay? Why is it important to know the reward we get? Because it's a direct cause and effect. Because you're respecting life, therefore you get life. So regarding now applying this to the concept of abuse, number one is, as I said, abuse. If someone abuses you, they're breaking the Torah, above all. They're breaking what God wants. So to honor them, you could say, no, you can't honor them for the abuse, because if the abuse is hurting you and continues to hurt you, then it could very well be, if a professional says, stay out of the line of fire, it's important for your health, which is also a mitzvah. And Pekuach Nefesh, we also know, is Decha Kol HaTorah Kula. Pekuach Nefesh doesn't always mean life and death, it could also be your health, your welfare. This would include even the parents about being them under a chuppah, could be. I'm not saying in every case. Why? Because it comes down to whether some people have worked through the abuse, they've grown through it, they've transcended. Not that they necessarily have forgiven, not that the parents are absolved of their responsibility, but it could be, it's not affecting you in any negative way. I know people who said, you know what, I allowed my father, even though he abused me, to be under the chuppah. Why? Because at the end of the day, he's no longer hurting me. So let him have that honor. Not out of weakness, because, like you write, people who don't want to speak about it because of their shame, or because they don't want to destroy the family, or because they don't want to upset the whole cart. But there are people who've grown through it. That's why I can't just say black and white. We have also another halach, but there are circumstances where it may be a situation where if your health is being hurt, it's like saying your parents are putting poison in your coffee every day. Do you have to go drink coffee with them because they're asking you to honor them? Obviously not. The same thing could be psychologically and emotionally. So it depends on the circumstance in that regard. That's where we also have a halacha, Hilchos Erev Yom Kippur. It talks about the issues of forgiveness. It says you have to forgive someone who's let's say someone who's hurt you, asked for forgiveness. You're not supposed to be an achzer, meaning cruel, and not forgive them. However, with two exceptions. The Alter Rebbe brings this in Shulchan Aruch. One exception is if you feel they're not contrite enough, they've not really done tshuva, and their heart hasn't been broken, you have a right to not forgive them because you feel they have not yet done what they had to go through in order to really be sincere in their request. Even if this request is sincere, if you feel they have not been broken enough, you can refrain from giving forgiveness. Second is if it hurts you. If you forgive them and it hurts you. So I've not seen necessarily this applied to the concept of honoring your parents, but why wouldn't it be? It seems like a logical connection. What's the logical connection? That if your parents are hurting you in the process of a past abuse that continues to hurt, or whatever it is that, and very often it continues to hurt. Why? Because there was no forgiveness, there was no regret, there was denial, and the big conspiracy and secret continues on, the toxins continue to be fed, so then it's in a situation you're being hurt. If you're being hurt, even forgiveness, and the same thing with honoring your parents, may be honoring them by not forgiving them. That's the honoring, because that's the healthy thing to do. Maybe you have to stay at home and say a kapitel tilim for their neshama that they should do tshuva. So that's the response to that question. Regarding the second issue, which is, well, equally complicated, very, very difficult situation, because children are impressionable. If the abuse came as a child, then, and it came from a role model that was Jewish, it's very hard to not throw out the baby with the bathwater, as they say. Because you know it came from a direction, from a place that was supposed to be a holy place, a teacher, a parent, someone that was a Jewish role model. So of course Judaism is going to appear horrific. Because you see this person who's holy, who's sacred, who's supposed to be someone that's respected, behaving in that way, and then you see the public respecting that person, you begin to say, what kind of Judaism is this? Obviously, logically, the argument would be, you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater just because one person is a bad apple, or if two people are. But there's so many beautiful things in Judaism that come from God. But then, of course, the counter response is, one second, if God allowed a person like that to represent him, the Chil Hashem aspect, if God allows people to respect that person, and it's all covered up, and everything is, I'm the problem, how could I respect that? That is why it's so devastating. Besides the abuse itself, the fact that Chil Hashem it creates, that it actually can destroy a person's relationship with Hashem and with Torah, because the person who is representing Hashem and Torah abused the person, that tells you how grave the abuse is. From the perspective of the person who's healing, I don't think this forum is enough to be able to tell you what to do. I think you need to speak to someone and work it through. What you need to work on is going to be not just about Judaism, about the rest of your life. Because there are many beautiful things that happen in a person's life, and they get contaminated and polluted by the person who delivered it. So let's say love in your life, and then the person who loved you hurt you. You need to work out that the love is still real, even though the hurt is not. And that's a difficult thing to do, but that takes work and it's doable. So this isn't just about Yiddishkeit, it's about in general. That often, like with cancer, the good cells die with the bad cells when you treat the cancer. You want to make sure that the good cells are preserved even though you kill off the bad ones. But often it gets polluted and it gets convoluted. Some people don't want to be in a relationship altogether. Why? Because the relationships they saw hurt them. So why do I go there altogether? But what you're doing is a disservice to yourself. You're throwing out everything when what you really want to do is extract the fruit, the beauty of a relationship, and eliminate the negativity. Like some people, after the Holocaust, didn't want to build families and have children. And what was the Rebbe's response to people? You're continuing the Holocaust. You're doing exactly what the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, wanted, that everything should stop. What you want to do is separate the two and realize that building a home and family can be done in a loving and a healthy way, even though you've seen the devastation that that people can perpetrate upon other people. And this is a common thread that goes in all type of healing, that initially, when you get really hurt, you just don't want to go there altogether. You want to write off and just eliminate the whole thing and say the whole thing is polluted, but it's not. It's like someone's not going to drink water any longer. Why? Because once they drank water, or more than once, the water was destructive, was polluted, and caused them illness. What you want to do is be able to slowly acclimate yourself back and drink water, make sure the water is clean and pure and healthy. But not to drink any longer because it was polluted. The water fundamentally is not polluted, just to use that as an example. So that's the work that needs to be done, and it takes work, and it could be done. Because as we grow into adults, we learn to separate. We learn, and that's where you'll see anyone who's healed, and I've seen many who have, so it's doable and achievable. They come to realize that there's certain things in life that happen to them. That doesn't mean the whole picture was bad, it means part of it. And yes, sometimes you need to throw out initially, like Hafsokeh we learned before about Hafsokeh. Sometimes you need to lose faith in an unhealthy version of God and an unhealthy version of Judaism before you reclaim it in a healthy way. But this has to be done very carefully and very sensitively. Because as I said, logic, everyone can understand that there's a snowball, it's now a mixture of good and evil, and we have to separate the two. But emotionally, it's very difficult to separate because it's hard for you to look at Judaism, look at this person who represented it to me, took advantage of the situation and hurt me. How am I supposed to look at Judaism again with clean, naive, and innocent eyes? But as I said, it takes work and it could be done. And it's been proven time and again that it could be done in the context of religion as well as context of relationships and trust. Because remember, at the end of the day, what was abused most was trust. So we're never going to trust again the rest of our lives. Do you know what kind of consequences that has? So what you want to do is learn to trust slowly. A person like that needs to go slowly. They need to learn to trust. They can't just say, just trust me, because they've been hurt. They're not neutral about it. But with work and with the proper guidance and the proper tutelage, the proper mentorship, you could come to that place. Okay. Let's talk about a few other things, a little lighter or easier. So the next question is, Isaac is Abraham's only son. Why is Isaac referred to? Greetings, Rabbi Jacobson. I'm wondering why Isaac is referred to as Abraham's only son in the Akedah. It's bincha sichitcha, I guess you're saying. Your son, your only one. And at least one other place in my Siddur. Another place in your Siddur, I'm sure besides the Akedah, could be. I would be very interested in your explanation of this. Thank you. Well, the basic explanation is very simple. The pasuk says, "As binchas asher ahavta, as binchas yichitchas asher ahavta." Because if you just said bincha, your son, he has another son, Ishmael. So he has to qualify which one. So it says, "As yichitcha." What does it mean, your only son? It means not your only son. Abraham had another son. It means your only son with Sarah. Sarah and Abraham are only one son, Yitzchak. The ahavta I'm not going to go into right now. It's not relevant to the topic. So that's the basic answer. The fact of the matter is Yishmael is Beferish, the son of Avram. And Lu Yichre Yishmael Lefanech. And Avram even prayed that Yishmael should inherit and should preserve his legacy. And as a matter of fact, we actually do attribute that. Later by Matan Torah, who does Hashem go to when he offers the Torah? To Bnei Esav, the children of Esav, the son of Yitzchak, and the children of Yishmael, the son of Avram. And you'll find a number of places that Yishmael is spoken about and the children of Yishmael as children of Avram. Later, even Islam, as the Rambam says, originates from those teachings and helps pave the way to the Geula. So Yishmael has definitely from the seed of Abraham and therefore has power. It has to be harnessed, it has to be directed, it has to be tamed, just like the children of Esav have to be tamed. So the concept of Abraham's only son in the Akedah, when you say only, meaning from Yisara, because that became the path of that gave birth to Yitzchak, that gave birth to Yaakov, that gave birth to the Shvatim. That would be the path of the Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, who would ultimately go into Egypt and leave Egypt, receive the Torah, and be the teachers, the people of the book, that would bring the mandate of God to the entire world, including to the children of Yishmael. But the children of Yishmael you'll see pop up more than once. And you see them even referred to in the different places in the Midrashim that talk about the Mefarshim and Midrashim, the commentaries, talk about the vision of Daniel, that the four empires, and one of them, especially according to the Even Ezra, refers to the empire of the Ishmaelite empire. So they are part of the birur and the refinement. If you look at the Maimorim, Tavshin Tes, Pesach Maimorim, the Frierdiker Rebbe, Tavshin Tes, you'll see it says the last birur of Edom, Esav, and Yishmael. So you have this concept throughout the Sfarim and throughout Torah Sheba'al Peh. Yishmael is absolutely a factor and important in history. But the only son, that's the answer to your question. Okay, next question. Why does a divorced woman have to cover her hair? Okay, so firstly, let me refer you to the hair covering episodes that I dealt with in episodes 95, 96, and 97. There are long discussions about the significance of what hair is, the power of hair, in the spiritual power that hair carries, both in women and men, and the different contradictions where you find the growth of hair, the cutting of hair, the power of the nazir, the shimshon. On the other hand, the need to cut the hair. Chassidus talks about this at length, and I elaborated back then, 95, 96, and 97, about hair covering in general. As far as a divorcee goes, so the basic reason is the following. One of the main reasons why the hair is covered is because hair has a form of sexual energy. as we spoke then, and I'll reiterate now, sexual energy is not bad energy. It's intimate energy. Just like the Holy of Holies, you cover up. Not because there's something ugly or disgusting or obscene. It's because it's the holiest. And holiness is covered. Here is a holy thing. But however, for a woman who's not ever been married, meaning has not yet had an intimacy in her life, so then the hair still is so-called innocent and is not prone to any negative forces, negative bacteria to wean energy from it. But once a woman is married, the hair now is that energy has been released, intimate energy has been released. So now needs more care. There should not be yanika sachitzenim. For other negative forces should come try to wean and glean energy and nurse energy from that power. So a divorcee, that didn't change. She's already experienced intimacy. That's why she technically should cover her hair. However, Rabbanim today make heterim. Why? Because the fact is she's already not in a marriage, and it could very well be it can affect her ability to date and find the right right man to marry her second marriage. So that's why there are heterim. How would you explain in the context of the spiritual message? You could say since intimacy was released is true, but since right now she's not in that place, perhaps you can be a little more lenient, according to those opinions that are lenient in this regard. But some women take on, and the rules, some rabbis that don't give this leniency, and the reason is for what I just explained. Now, for more details, I refer you back to those episodes to get more into understanding what does it mean that hair has such power, and what does it mean the Yinika Sachitzenim, and so on and so forth. Okay. Let's move to the next question. The next question is parnossa before marriage. Is it inappropriate for a bochur to earn parnossa before marriage? Rabbi Jacobson. After a bochur receives smicha, which is ordination, him ordination for being a rav, is it considered taboo for him to earn parnossa before marriage? Is he considered to be less chassidish for doing so? What is the Rebbe's position on this inyan? Thank you. Okay. I've talked about parnossa in general, and also more importantly, what people who are out of school should be doing, whether it's men or women. Should they just be hanging around waiting for a shidduch? So these were in episodes 53, 54, and 55, episode 120 and 169, 170, 171, and 172. 169 through 172. So that again complements what I'll be saying now. I think in this type of situation, like many times I say this again, case by case, as well as understanding the personality you're dealing with. And this is not uncommon in the Rebbe's approach to things when it came to, let's say, the shluchim he sent to Israel. And they asked what should be their final shlichus. So the Rebbe gave options. First option, it says, is to become a rav. Second option is to become a shliach in a Chabad house. And the Rebbe wants those two the options till the last option, if there's no other choice, to go into business. And you're still a shliach because I've sent you in Eretz Yisrael and doing whatever you can to spread Yiddishkeit and Torah. So I think you can apply the same principle here. First choice is obviously to continue to learn and aggressively date, because a person like this should be going into marriage as soon as possible. That's the Torah way, that's the Chassidic way. However, to say that a person, let's say, is not made, that doesn't have that chemistry, it doesn't have that hasmod, is not going to sit and really learn, they're going to just waste time. So to say they should just hang around the streets and not go to work, you can't say that either. Again, it may not be option one, maybe it's option three. Option two, I would say, is maybe work in a place of Klei Kodesh, teaching, assistant to teaching, helping a Chabad house, maybe doing work in that Chabad house, which could be for pay. So at least you're involved in Yoni Gedusha and Yoni Holy of the Shlichus and Kavanah that we were taught to, that we were trained and we were sent to this world to do. If all that doesn't work out, then to say that absolutely no, not work at all, I would not say that. But only after exhausting the first two options, because you could also work and you could also make money in a more of a holier environment. The reason I'm saying it is because the mission of a person is to make a dira b'tachtenim. However, as we all know, when you're 5 years old, you're still in training. When you're 15 years old and 20 years old, you're still in yeshiva and you're still in that environment. You don't necessarily just simply have to run out into the outside world, which can be dangerous. What do I mean by dangerous? You don't yet have a family. You don't yet have a wife. There's many initiations out there, tests. So why put yourself in position, al tavienu l'dei nisayon, we say. Why put yourself in additional type of challenges? Secondly, why is your mind into purely money? Is this why your soul was sent to earth? So a Chassidus bochur, a person who's saturated and infused with the kavanah, the purpose for which we were created, at this stage you're not yet there. Now, that doesn't mean there comes the next stage of marriage, and then you need to make a living. Some people, there too there's the options, as I said, going on shlichus, something in the klei kodesh, meaning something in the work of a chinuch or in Jewish type of work. But is it possible also to go into business? But then you have already pas b'saleh, which means you have a wife, you're building a family, you have a home, you're more secure in that sense. So it's less of a challenge. That's the way I would phrase the reasons how I would recommend to a bochur not to just go throw yourself into work. In addition, as I said, at that point, why aren't you trying to fulfill what the Rebbe sent you told us to be shluchim in? Why would you not be involved in that if you're a talented person? So what? Because money is more important than everything. Some people say, I need money, security. At that point, you should be more interested in fulfilling the purpose than the money and security. That's clearly from the Rebbe, the general guideline. But to completely eliminate that option, I'm not going to say that, because there's clearly situations where I've seen that from the Rebbe as well, even though he discouraged, but sometimes that's the circumstances, and there are many different types of circumstances that compel a person to actually go work. But I would not put that on top of the list, I would put it as the last option, or one of the last options. That's my response to that question. Another question came in about the spiritual meaning of colors. And what is the question? What is the spiritual meaning of colors? Rabbi here, hi Rabbi Jacobson, could you tell us which is the spiritual meaning of colors in Judaism? With all the information out there, like yoga or Reiki, I don't know what is the real meaning anymore. Visualizing light around and inside of me brings me a lot of peace and well-being. So this question is very important to me. Thank you. So I won't repeat what I've already discussed. I refer you directly to episodes 91 and 92, where I elaborated at length the meaning of colors according to Kabbalah, according to Chassidus, and you can just go to 91, 92 and you'll get a direct answer. There's no reason to go over it again. Let me do a few follow-up, and then we shall do the question of Chassidus question, and yes, follow-up. Just a moment here, follow-up. Yes, last week, 200, episode 200, we spoke about more refined men. And here's a man's response to what I discussed. Reb Simon, thank you for your enlightening weekly videocasts. I am newly married and in kollel. My wife and I enjoy watching your farbrengens and discussing them. In episode 200, you read a question from a woman asking, how can we get men to be more refined in their approach to marriage and family? I thought I would share a young man's perspective. Growing up in Crown Heights, going to a Hol Torah, I recognized both the blessings and sacrifice I was making and adhering to a Chassidic lifestyle. Personally, for me, not having a girlfriend and a physical relationship with a woman during my late teens and early 20s was very challenging. Nevertheless, as a Chassid, I did my very best at controlling my passions. In my self-talk, I told myself that when I get married, I'll be able to fulfill that aspect of my life with my wife in a kosher way. When I got married, I certainly wanted and still do want to make up for lost time, so to speak. Of course, our bond is not only physical, and with years, I hope our emotional bond will only continue to deepen. But I can't deny that there's a strong physical or hormonal component to our intimate life. To put this in Torah's words, ish darke lichbesh, in all matters and manners of life. Which means ish darke lichbesh is the manner of a man is to conquer. I'm very ready to realize that as I go through life and the biological changes life brings, that the very strong physical passions may be softened, but I think that there's an injustice done to teach women who may tend towards the more sensitive emotional way, that marriage is primarily about emotional connection and not stress the physical connection. Of course, I'm not writing this to condone young men, or women for that matter, looking at inappropriate things. But I think more should be done to foster the blessings of intimacy within the framework of marriage and not to shun it as crass or unrefined. Thanks. Yes, I agree with what you said, but as you wrote, you're a young man. which means you have a lot to learn ahead of you. And the Torah says, one flesh. Intimacy is not just a cerebral and platonic experience. It absolutely has a physical dimension, and frankly, is the only way to bear children. But more importantly, the intimacy, the physical intimacy, absolutely is kodesh and toher, al pi halacha, in the right time, in the right way, and so on. And we learned that, and the Rebbe brings it, and I've discussed it at length many, many times. So that's correct. But you have to also remember that like in everything, just like when you eat a meal, we're supposed to eat. Just like when you do other physical activities, work. But overindulgence, without recognizing that there's a soulfulness and a spirituality, that the kavanah of the physical is in order to bring a deeper spiritual connection and a deeper emotional connection, I think that's what I would emphasize a lot more than you have. It's true you mentioned the emotional connection that grows, but you can't imagine the physical connection itself is enhanced by an emotional connection. I'm not negating that the physical connection can also enhance the emotional, but the emotional can enhance the physical. And that's what I would submit to you as a young man, and all people listening, to work on that. And you'd be surprised what you discover, because the human being is not just two bodies. Love is not just two bodies. There's a spirit, there's emotions, there's feelings, and there's a much that goes into it that's more than just a physical act. And the more you bring that spirit into it, the deeper that physical connection as well is in there. That's what I would say is my comment. Another follow-up is about prayer. We've been talking about davening the last few weeks and continue to add some more points. And I will say the following, read davening, requesting our needs. Dear Rabbi Jacobson, thank you for your weekly video shiurim and your current focus on davening, prayer. I'm writing to comment on something you said in episode 199. To paraphrase, you said that davening is relative to who you are, your own soul. The request for material things is for the purpose of elevation. The focus of davening is the soul connection, the soul connecting to Hashem, a soul connection and emoting to Hashem. My comment is that from what I've been taught, we shouldn't disregard the importance of requesting our physical needs from Hashem. Instead of looking at bochur tzrachav and personal issues in davening, meaning requesting our needs, as a distraction and a necessary evil, our focus should be to humbly recognize that we are physical beings, yes, with a soul, and our entire being here on this planet is dependent on Hashem's blessing of health, safety, parnossa, livelihood, and so on. This is why at the pinnacle of our davening in Shemoneh Esrei we mention all these physical needs, something we didn't do before. We shouldn't pretend that we're just a soul wanting to connect to Hashem, but we're a composite being, body and soul, who is entirely dependent and nullified before Hashem for every basic need, for our very life, of course, as you quote, period. Of course, as you quoted the Rebbe, the material blessings we have are to be utilized to make the world a better place, Adar v'tachtenim. Am I to understand that according to Chabad Chassidus, we should not focus on bochur tzrachav, requesting our needs? Very good question. So when you look at the idea of tefillah, and I will elaborate because I didn't mention, I should have maybe spelled it out, and thank you for the opportunity to do so. Bochur tzrachav in the Rambam, the basic mitzvah in the Daraisa of tefillah is to pray only when you have a need, to ask for your needs. The Rambam says it clearly, that tefillah is to request your needs. Means when you don't have a need, there's no mitzvah to daven. However, the Rabbanon added all kinds of different elements to davening, that when you want your needs, you have to want to also appease and satisfy Hashem. And then there's the other elements of davening. There's the thank yous of that's the what I just said is the piyus, tefillah's piyus. Then there's the tefillah's teda where you're thanking and acknowledging Hashem. They added that as well. And then you have the other elements of tefillah that are elaborated in Hilchos Tefillah at length. But Chassidus comes and talks about avodas tefillah. When you talk about the Chassidim Rishonim Hayashayim, they would daven, and they would prepare for davening for hours. Avodas tefillah, Eizu avodas shebalev zuhi tefillah. What is the service of the heart? This is prayer. Va'avadtem es Hashem alekechem, as in serving God. So this does not negate bochur tzrachav. Bochur tzrachav is the minimum, and that's actually what is required. But then there's tefillah as connecting. Avodas tefillah, tefillah from the word hatefel klecheres, that you're connecting, attaching yourself. So it's a form of communing with God. Like karbonis became karbonis. Karbonis were not just, some karbonis were for one purpose or another. But karbonis was also melashon kiruv, coming closer, the karav keches, as the Bechai writes, to bring your faculties and your whole person, Adam ki yakrim mekayim, your animal soul, as the Alter Rebbe teaches, to bring that closer to the divine. And then tefillah takes on a far more broader scope, which is our connecting, our attaching. And that's where you have Avedis HaTefillah that Chassidus so elaborates on, the Alter Rebbe, but especially when you look in Kuntras HaTefillah from the Rebbe Rashab and Kuntras HaAveda, Avedis HaTefillah, as he says clearly, in connecting and through his bonus and contemplation and bringing down into emotions, awakening of emotions in our connection and our fusion and our ability to unify ourselves with the divine and the divine purpose of our lives. So it's not a contradiction, but this is how you spell it out. I have not seen anywhere that really talks about this, and maybe if someone out there is listening, maybe knows there's an actual source that compares Avedis HaTefillah Chassidus talks about with Bakoshes Tzrachov. I may recall reading once an essay about it, but I'm not sure. But this is clearly when you read Avedis Shebelev. Because to ask your requests, you don't need Avedis, you don't need to necessarily be particularly emotional about it. You could be. But you can ask your requests, say, please send me parnossa, send me livelihood, send me health, and other requests and needs that human needs that we have. But Avedis Shebelev as in Vavadtes Hashem Alekechem, Vahaftes Hashem Alekecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafsha b'chol meidecha. That's more than just Bakoshes Tzrachov. That you shall love the Shema and Vahafta. We are not talking about requesting your needs, even though afterwards it talks about V'nesati Matar and so on. But the point is that you're asking, you're loving God with all your heart, with all your might, with all your spirit, with all your soul, and with all your might, with all of you. That already is Nadargi, what Chassidus talks about, Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem, which is birthed through his bonus and contemplation, and all the different stages in davening, the four rungs, and the climbing of the ladder, the journey that we call prayer, which of course is discussed so much about in the Sifrei Chassidus Chabad, about Avedis HaTefillah. Okay, so we covered prayer as well. We will continue more because there's more to say about the prayer, but we will continue that in upcoming episodes. Let me now go to the Chassidus question of the week. Chassidus question of the week goes like this. Okay, and that is, let's see here. If the hidden good is greater than the revealed good, why do we wish each other revealed good? Very good. So, Tanya Perik Chavov, 26, I mentioned it earlier, which was the Shir Tanya that we learned a little while back, last week actually. So this is what the questioner says. The hidden good that doesn't fit into this world, which is the expression in Tanya, we should be happy that we are experiencing a closeness to God. This is all translated Tanya. What's the equation then of wishing and blessing people? Why then are we wishing and blessing people? It should be revealed good, but teva nirva nigla, the way we humans understand good, the way we understand good. The Tanya is saying that when someone suffers, or there's yisurim, or oppression, or anything else where he doesn't see good, you should know that's even deeper good that cannot be revealed in this world. That's why the only way it can be expressed is through a concealed way, which seems to be the opposite. So the questioner is asking, so then why do we wish each other the revealed good? We should be looking for that higher, deeper good. Seemingly like the marshmallow test on delayed gratification. The greater good is greater than the lesser good. Is the greater good greater than the lesser good? Take, for example, coming into this world. It's not easy, but it's worth it. The reward is in the next world. Enjoy one now or much greater later. Once you tell me that hard times is the greater good, for it to really mean something, you should have to want it always more than the second to best option. In other words, if you're taking seriously these words, then you should want this. It's like saying it's better, but don't go there. Why shouldn't you always want it if it's real? And B, on the flip side, in general, can you please explain why the lesser good, the revealed good, is what we should wish for? Thank you very much for your awesome work and this great platform. Much blessing. Even though I don't know the answer yet, I bless you in the form of abundance of blessings, way more than you could imagine possible, in a revealed and tangible way. Okay, we could say this is the category of what's called a klotz kasha, very basic question. But the answer is also basic. And the answer is as follows. The same Hashem that conceals good sometimes in a package that looks not positive, also created good and said that he wants that things should be good in a revealed way. So even though, yes, there is a deeper type of good in the Helam, it's called Chesed, Chesodim Nistarim. However, the same God also said, I want to give you real good and I want you to pray for it and ask for it, which is why we daven and we ask for revealed good. Because that's also a Gili Elikus. The fact that godliness and the goodness of godliness is not revealed is a Helam not just for us, it's also for God a concealment. So the idea of revealed good is absolutely the kavanah. However, God in his mysterious ways sometimes wants to send us a package of even better good. So he conceals it. But not the kavanah should remain concealed, the kavanah should be revealed. So when a person has betochen and trust and faith that even things that come that seem negative in their lives also has revealed good, that itself reveals it and ultimately will be revealed. When we say Mashiach will come, we don't just say we're going to be satisfied with the concealment of the divine. The Frierdiker Rebbe Taka says, Mitzvah Benken, we will yearn for the time of Golus when we had to struggle. Because in the struggle there's something very profound. But ultimately, the ultimate revelation is that even the profound concealed good should also be revealed. So when we bless someone revealed good, we're blessing two things we're saying. The good should be revealed and you should never have to have something that's concealed. And even when you do have something concealed, that also should be revealed. That it shouldn't remain concealed. So the fact of the matter is, when a teacher, for example, is conveying an idea to a student, so he says it in words the student can understand. But if the teacher has a very profound love for the student, he'll also implant ideas that right now the student is not capable of understanding yet. But it's in there, it's in the words. And as time will pass, the student will realize that this hint or this message that this teacher said is even deeper than the one that he taught me. And you'll realize how profound that is. And you realize that there's even a deeper love. At the time it's concealed because it couldn't have been revealed either because the student was not capable or because the power of the idea itself needs time to be absorbed and to be revealed, however you explain it. Or because the greater good can only be expressed in words that are beyond the containers of revealed good, whatever the reason is. But then you realize that when it comes real, you say, wow, that teacher really loved me, gave me something, resources and tools, which of course is an unbelievable message regard to Gimel Tammuz, when you realize, as the Rebbe said many times regarding the Frierdiker Rebbe, which of course applies to the Rebbe, that the Rebbe tals bavornt, that even at a time when we don't feel you're getting direct flow, the Rebbe bavornt everything, the answers are there. And when you find them, you realize they're even deeper love than when the Rebbe said them in a revealed way. Because you realize he prepared. That's how much he cared about you, that he prepared something that would later have like we call a delay reaction that you later will be revealed. So the bottom line is Tevani Revanigla is the Kavona. And Sich in Vayigash Tovshin in Vayigash Chelik Hey. There's a brilliant, powerful Sikha where the Rebbe says about Mashiach and Gula. It says, Mashiach and Gula, Chassidus says, is Nachas Ruach Nivra. When a person, let me backtrack a moment. I'm rushing a bit. It says in the Mishnah, Yofer Sha'achas B'tshuva Maisim Tevim B'kol Chai Elam Haba. Now 1 hour of Tshuva Maisim Tevim B'Elam Haza in this world is greater than all the entire world to come. Then it continues. The Mishnah continues, Yofer Sha'achas Shal Kedas Ruach B'Elam Haba. 1 hour of pleasure in the world to come is more than all the pleasures of Kol Chai Elam Haza, of this world. Seems a contradiction. And the answer is given, V'kocha, that's the Rebbe Marash, you talk about Nachas Ruach, Boire, the Hashem, the Creator's Nachas, pleasure. 1 hour on this earth is worth more than the entire world to come. When you talk about Nachas Ruach Nivra, our Nachas Ruach, the pleasure of Elam Haba, is far greater than the pleasures of this world. So based on that, it would appear that when Elam Haba comes and we get to Geula, the Pirish of Elam Haba is not just Gan Eden, but Losid Love, it's only like a candy thrown to the recipient. Hashem has more nachas in this world when we struggle. So the whole Mashiach is just to give people a reward, but God doesn't need that. So the Rebbe answers no, that the Giluyim is Negei and Atzmus. That if the good is revealed only to Hashem and not to us, there's some type of compromise even on the highest levels. Shleimus of Atzmus, that it should be Begilui. Begilui, that even we should see it. That's still is not a contradiction that the deepest good is Nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu. Where does God desire? Did it b'tachtenim. Much more than the higher worlds where there's a lot more revelation. But He wants that concealed divine that is here in this world to be revealed. And that's also Negei Atzmus, not just for us. Which adds the whole dimension of this question that you've asked. Very good question. So with that, we will conclude this episode 201 of MyLife Chassidus Applied. As always, it's a great honor to speak to you. Everyone should have a very freilich and chedesh Adar, freilich and tamid. And I remind you again about the contest, which is, the due date is the end of this week, Friday, of the submission of essays in this 4th annual MyLife Chassidus Applied contest. Please submit, and Hashem should bless everybody to succeed, and bless you all to win, and win the prize, and have both Tevla Shamayim, Tevla Brias, Nachas Ruach Nivra and Nachas Ruach Beira, that both you will have pleasure from your success in winning the essay contest, as well as giving the Eibishter and the Rebbe pleasure for the idea of taking Chassidus, your chutza, and applying and implementing it in our lives. So every week we're here Sunday, 8 to 9 p.m. MyLife Chassidus Applied. Thank you. Be well.